because they could keep each other balanced, but you should have that, because at the end of the day, in this truth, being a leader is to establish order. And if you don't establish that order, and sometimes you have to assert your authority, because you have men that will run over you. And if you don't assert that authority, they're not going to respect you. You have to put your foot down. Sometimes you have to make examples of individuals, suspend individuals or send individuals home, that are not, that are being insubordinate, and eventually even kick certain individuals out that are full of shit. And this will establish, a godly type fear of the men under you to reverence you as a leader. And sometimes you have to do that, because if you're too soft with Jake, you know how Jake is. Jake will run dry shot over you. Jake will just run you through the ringer if you allow them. You have to put your foot down, no matter if you're not that type of individual, even if you're not, because Elder Yashwamba and myself, we kind of had similar kind of spirits, like laid back, don't want to ruffle too many feathers. I was trying to be cool with everybody, but that doesn't work. You have to put your foot down. You have to establish order, because that's why the Lord got us here, to establish order, and I'm just saying that in the spirit, So when this individual came up at the camp, the elders dealt with him correctly. But the thing about it is, he came up there with that bravado. He came up there with that blowhard spirit that they always come with. Let's see, the elder put 2 Thessalonians 3:14, and if any man obey not our word by this epistle, beautiful, note that man and have no company with him, that he may be ashamed, yet count him not as an enemy, but admonish him as a brother. Right? Because you have brothers out there that might just be, heady, like, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a particular word, I can't think of it right now. But they're sincere, in their heart, they're sincere in their things they do, but they're just stubborn. They're just hard-headed. You just got to, mold them and break them out of that spirit. That's why it says, don't count him as an enemy, but admonish him as a brother. And if he takes the correction, then beautiful, you won your brother back. Because at the end of the day, it's not about destroying anybody. It's about building brothers up. It's about, building up the flock and the building of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. But you have to have order. You have to be, as a leader, sometimes you have to be hard. Sometimes you have to make decisions you may not want to make, just to make a point. Because at the end of the day, if the men that you're leading do not respect you, then what's the use? You have to establish. Sometimes you have to establish that respect, because respect means to look back upon something. And sometimes you make certain decisions where the men, then they say, "Oh shit," and then it causes godly fear, and it causes brothers to get in order, because they know that although you may be mild-mannered, you could still, put your foot down when you have to, So, like I said, the video was on the Remnant Saved, the